So in this is the first question of our CK exam, which came in my CK exam when I gave the CK exam. The first question is create new HPA named HPA Apache server in autoscale namespace. This HPA must have existing deployment called Apache server in the autoscaling namespace. Set HPA to target for 50% CPU usage per pod. Configure HPA to have one minimum pod number of pod more than four pod maximum. 1 minute pod, no more pod than 4 maximum pods. So we have to set maximum pod as 4 pods, and also we have to set the downscale stabilization windows to 30 seconds. We have to configure everything, so we'll be configuring that. So let's solve this question, first question which came in my CK exam. Let's try solving the question now. Before we solve the question, let's check if we have autoscale namespace. In exam it will be provided, but I don't think I have that. So this is the cluster I have. This is the cluster I have. I'll probably try solving it using this cluster. So in the exam you will have this thing. You will have this thing. Right? Let me show you that. This thing you will have, like, you have to set the context. You have to use the context. Then you have to copy the context and paste in the terminal. So you work only on in the particular context given in the question. So you have to change the context and use the particular context which is provided for the question. You have to use that. So you have to be careful with changing the context, because you have to work on the same context where the question was provided. It will be provided in the question itself. You need to copy that and to paste it in the terminal, and you will switch to that context. So let's go ahead and try to solve the question. What was the question? Question was, let me create the namespace first of all. Create ns auto scale namespace. So a deployment will be there. So let's create the deployment also and then try to solve this question. Autoscale namespace. Let's create deployment. Create deploy. Deployment name is Apache server, right? Apache image will be Nginx. I'll use Nginx. In the exam it will be already provided, right? Already this deployment will be there, so you don't need to worry about the creation of deployment. I'm creating it because for the sake of just solving this question. So in the namespace autoscale, let me check if the namespace is there or deployment is there. We have the deployment. It is not running yet. Let me check. It's running now. Let's check the deployment. It's one by one. So we have to create HPA now. To create the HPA, you have to follow the documentation which is provided by Kubernetes CKA team. Linux Foundation, they'll provide the document. They'll ask you to use the documentation as much as you can. So you have to use the documentation. For creating the HPA, there's a documentation you have to follow. This is a documentation. You have to go there and then go here. Like, let me go from starting. Kubernetes documentation, and in documentation I need to search HPA. You have to go to this second one. There's a command to create the HPA. This is the command. Copy this command and then try to not create it. Try to dry run first of all. Let me. What was the minimum? 4 pods, right? And CPU percentage was 50%, and then Apache server. Our deployment name is Apache server. Apache server in namespace autoscale. Don't need to create it because we need to have a file, because we need to edit stabilization also. For that we need to have a file. Let's create a file. rather than applying it and then rather than creating it, let's do dry run and try to get the file in YAML and then try to update that file using the documentation and try to apply this file, and then let's see how it goes. So for dry run, you don't need to do anything. You just need to go here and then do hyphen dry run client output hyphen o YAML output in HPA. Have to save it into HPA, right? Saving it to HPA dot YAML. This will create an HPA.yaml file. This will actually create the manifest of this HPA. Let me it has created, right? Let me do that. It has created it, right? So we need to delete certain things and then you have to uh, apply the file hpa.yaml. We need to delete the timestamp and then namespace. We have not provided namespace, is it? Let me check. Do we provide namespace? We have not provided namespace, right? So we have to provide the namespace also. Autoscale namespace we have provided, so it should have been there. So delete this. Then we need to add a flag, right? We need to add this flag stabilization window. Stabilization. I'm searching, but they will not provide any feature of searching. Control F they will not provide in the exam. We need this flag. So we are copying this flag, and you have to add it in under spec. Behavior is there. Under spec, right? It is not. It is under spec. Is it under spec? It is under spec. So let's apply this file. Now let's get the namespace. Add the namespace. Save the file. Apply. Okay, so behavior should be under spec. I have put it under it should be here. Now it should work fine. Let's create it, right? Let's check HPA. It is there, right? So stabilization window is also set to how much percentage? Stabilization window is for 30%, right? So what was the question? 30 seconds. 30 seconds I have set to 30 seconds, and then minimum pod is one and maximum pod is 4, and then CPU 50%. It's set to 50%. It is not showing here because for this we need to have metrics server installed, so we don't have any metrics server installed right now, so that's why it doesn't show that. But this is how we solve this question. This is how you solve this question, and follow the documentation and follow the process and try to solve the question. So I've used two documentation here. First documentation is for dry run, right? For dry run purpose I use for this documentation I've used for that, for this command, right? And then second thing is this, from here stabilization window I've copied. I've copied stabilization window. This thing I copied and pasted it, and then I've first of all I saved it into try run into a manifest file. I've saved into locally by naming as hpa.yaml file, and then try to apply it after changing the manifest everything by using documentation. So these are we've solved the question. This was the first question. I'll cover more 16 questions like this, which came actually in my exam. So I'll cover all the questions. So you try to solve all the questions. If you solve all these questions, you'll be able to pass the exam very easily.